Most sunken warships disappear forever beneath deep, dark water, but a few never truly vanished, remaining eerily visible from the surface today. Some were destroyed by bombs, explosions, or catastrophic mistakes, yet decades later, their broken hulls still sit where anyone above can see. Today, we are exploring 6 sunken warships still visible from the surface, and the remarkable stories explaining how each one ended there. Our first wreck is USS Arizona, the famous Pennsylvania-class American battleship commissioned in 1916 and now resting permanently inside Pearl Harbor. Before her destruction, Arizona served for several decades, eventually joining the Pacific Fleet and becoming based at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. On December 7, 1941, Arizona was moored along Battleship Row when Japanese carrier aircraft suddenly launched their devastating surprise attack that morning. Several bombs struck the battleship, and one fatal hit triggered her forward ammunition magazines, producing an enormous explosion through the ship. The blast devastated Arizona's forward hull, collapsed major sections of her superstructure, and engulfed the wounded battleship in fire and smoke. The explosion killed 1,177 sailors and Marines, making Arizona the deadliest single ship loss at Pearl Harbor. The damage was so catastrophic that Arizona was never returned to service, and her shattered hull remained exactly where the battleship sank. During later salvage work, guns and much of the topside structure were removed, but the main wreck itself stayed beneath Pearl Harbor. Today, the white USS Arizona Memorial spans the sunken battleship, while parts of the wreck remain visible at the surrounding harbor surface. From the memorial, visitors can even see a round metal section of Arizona protruding above the surface, still exposed after 8 decades. What remains below is more than a wreck. Arizona stands as a lasting memorial to the sailors and Marines lost aboard her. Before we continue, subscribe to Sunken Inside and join us as we uncover more forgotten warships, disasters, and mysteries beneath the waves. Our second wreck is USS Utah, a former Florida-class battleship whose remains still break the surface beside Ford Island at Pearl Harbor. Commissioned in 1911, Utah originally served as a powerful American battleship before her career changed dramatically during the years between wars. In 1931, the Navy converted Utah into a radio-controlled target ship, later using her extensively for anti-aircraft gunnery training exercises as well. On December 7, 1941, Utah lay moored west of Ford Island when Japanese torpedo bombers swept low across Pearl Harbor suddenly. 2 torpedoes struck Utah, flooding her rapidly and causing the massive ship to roll violently onto her port side within moments. Crewmen desperately escaped through hatches and openings as Utah capsized, but 58 sailors ultimately lost their lives during the devastating attack. Unlike many damaged ships at Pearl Harbor, Utah was never fully salvaged because refloating the overturned hull proved extraordinarily difficult and impractical. Salvage crews later rolled the wreck partially upright and shifted it toward Ford Island, leaving much of the battleship permanently submerged there. Today, only part of Utah's starboard deck edge remains above the water, creating one of Pearl Harbor's most haunting, visible wartime wrecks. The wreck remains a memorial to those lost aboard, while exposed metal still lets visitors see history without diving beneath the water. Our third wreck lies in Bermuda, HMS Vixen, one of the strangest surviving warship wrecks still visible anywhere in the Atlantic today. Vixen was a Royal Navy iron gunboat from an experimental era when armored vessels and ramming bows seemed like naval warfare's future. Instead of being destroyed in battle, the aging warship was deliberately sunk in 1896 across Bermuda's Chubb-Cut Channel as a block ship. British planners wanted the sunken hull to obstruct torpedo boats, forcing attackers into more predictable approaches toward Bermuda's heavily defended naval dockyard. More than a century later, Vixen still rests in shallow water, where parts of the wreck remain clearly visible from boats above. Unlike most wrecks in this list, Vixen never sank during battle. The Royal Navy deliberately placed her there for defensive purposes. Her iron hull was positioned across Chub Cut Channel, creating a physical barrier designed to complicate attacks by fast torpedo boats. Because the water is shallow and remarkably clear, large sections of Vixen remain easy to spot from boats passing directly above. The wreck has become both an archaeological site and a striking reminder of how rapidly naval technology changed during the 19th century. More than 100 years after being deliberately sunk, Vixen still refuses to disappear, remaining visible beneath Bermuda's bright turquoise water. Our fourth wreck is Prince Eugen, the formidable German heavy cruiser that survived World War II and later endured American atomic tests. During the war, Prince Eugen fought alongside major German warships, supported operations in the Baltic, and survived repeated attacks and serious damage. After Germany surrendered in 1945, the cruiser passed into Allied hands and was eventually transferred to the United States Navy for testing. In 1946, Prince Eugen was taken to Bikini Atoll as a target ship during Operation Crossroads, America's dramatic post-war nuclear weapons experiments. Remarkably, the cruiser survived both atomic tests, although blast damage and radioactive contamination left the battered vessel increasingly difficult to maintain safely. She was later towed to Kwajalein Atoll, where uncontrolled flooding worsened until the enormous cruiser finally capsized and sank in December 1946. Prince Eugen settled upside down beside Enubuj Island, with much of her hull underwater, while the stern remained extremely close to surface. Even today, enormous propellers and stern sections still rise above the lagoon, making this famous warship visible without any diving equipment. The wreck once carried large quantities of fuel oil, prompting a major American salvage operation in 2018 to prevent environmental contamination nearby. After surviving wartime combat and 2 nuclear explosions, Prince Eugen remains one of the world's most extraordinary visible warship wrecks today. Our fifth vessel is USCGC Duane, a 327-foot Treasury-class cutter that served the United States through World War II and later Vietnam. Built in 1936, Duane joined the Atlantic Fleet before America's entry into war and soon became heavily involved in convoy escort missions. During wartime service, the cutter hunted submarines, protected merchant convoys, rescued survivors, and operated across dangerous North Atlantic waters for years. In April 1943, Duane and fellow cutter Spencer attacked and sank German submarine U-175 after detecting it near an Allied convoy. Decades later, after an exceptionally long military career, Duane was decommissioned in 1985 and intentionally sunk off Florida as an artificial reef. In 1987, Duane began her final assignment when crews deliberately flooded the retired cutter and sank her beside Molasses Reef, Florida. Unlike battle losses, Duane went down under controlled conditions, settling upright on a sandy bottom roughly 120 feet below surface. The wreck remains remarkably intact, preserving her hull, rudders, propellers, railings, ladders, and major sections of the original naval superstructure today. On exceptionally clear days, people above can actually make out Duane's enormous outline through the water, even though the wreck lies deep. Now an artificial reef and underwater museum, Duane shows how a former military vessel can gain an entirely different life after service. Our sixth and final warship is HMVS Cerberus, an extraordinary 19th century armored vessel still visible at Half Moon Bay near Melbourne today. Built for colonial Victoria, Cerberus was Australia's first armored fighting ship and among the earliest warships designed to operate entirely without sails. Her low armored hull carried 2 rotating gun turrets, creating a floating fortress intended to defend Melbourne and Victoria's valuable gold resources. Despite her intimidating appearance and powerful weapons, Cerberus never fired at an enemy during more than 5 decades of active naval service. After becoming obsolete, the old warship was sold, stripped of useful equipment, and eventually selected for one final practical role as breakwater. In September 1926, Cerberus was deliberately scuttled at Half Moon Bay, settling into shallow water only a short distance from Melbourne's shoreline. Nearly a century later, the wreck remains unmistakable, with its deteriorating armored structure and famous turrets still visible above the surrounding water. Cerberus may be slowly collapsing, but its exposed remains still let visitors see an authentic 19th century warship without ever going underwater. These 6 wrecks prove that some warships never completely disappear, leaving parts of their extraordinary histories visible above or through the water. Thanks for watching Sunken Inside. Subscribe for more forgotten warships, maritime disasters, and remarkable secrets still hiding across the world's oceans.